Good morning. It's good to see you. It's Rick Spain with Infinite Grace Ministries and being brought to you by Philip Reed and Reed Newspapers. Be sure and get a newspaper today. It's got lots of news in there. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I got some news. I got something that I wrote down a couple of years ago that I want to share with you this morning. It's called The Most Important Thing. And it goes like this. What is important? We fight, we strive, we allow unhealthy activities in our life for what? To achieve what we consider to be important. What is important? Well, get that new car, new house, or whatever we consider important. And as time goes on, what do? Well, we replace it with something else that's new, and we try to produce or rekindle the excitement that somehow gets lost in what we once considered to be important. And so we continue on with this rat race. As long as our rat's in the lead, well, the rest, it doesn't matter. We build and tear down only to build again. We can't celebrate our victories because we're too busy focusing on someone else's rat. What's important? To fill our outside so that our inside will feel better. That which was once considered to be the best becomes obsolete, and our inside reflects these facts and becomes lost in the never ending cycle that chases that so called important thing, which in reality is just another thing. So, what's important? Well, I could tell you it's this or that. We need to exercise more. We need to watch how we spend our money. We need to work harder, and by all means, we need to spend more time with our family. Yeah, it's just a need to do this and do that. Why? It's just something else to add, thinking that this cat is finally going to catch that elusive tail. So, what is important? You know, the religious leaders back in Jesus' day asked him that question. What's the most important thing? And this is what Jesus said. Uh, this question can be summed up in two categories. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. These religious leaders, they were looking for a long dissertation as to what is important, you know, and so in reality, their understanding is this is something, just a side thought. Too many words will get you in trouble. And that's what the Pharisees were really wanting. And that's the religious leaders. And so they're not, it's kind of interesting that when you have that religious mindset, that you're looking for somebody's wrong more than you're wanting to try to help them up to do what is right. Huh. Yep, Jesus went through that. So what did Jesus say? He said, well, it can be summed up in these two categories. One, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And the second law, to love your neighbor as yourself. If you keep this as your focus, all the rest of the stuff will find its own place. Without a doubt, what Jesus said is love fulfills every requirement. It's not centered on duty or on how much you attain in life. Because, see, this is what we tend to do. We think of, well, this is important, so it becomes a job to us. Jesus is not talking about another job. He's telling you this is what's important. And so the accumulation of wealth, it's just a byproduct of what you focus on. You can have all this stuff without love and miss what's really important. Well, I worked really hard for that stuff. Well, that's the key. This is the key. This is not something you have to work for, folks. It's something that God deposited in us. I'm going to continue on. I'm going to explain this to you. So this love that Jesus is talking about doesn't deny you to have stuff. It simply doesn't leave room for the stuff to be the most important thing. Love of God is primary. That's what Jesus said. Love the Lord your God, all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Okay. And so instead of focusing on what you want, see, we're looking at application here. Instead of focusing on what you want, focus on what He wants. Well, that sounds kind of selfish on God's part, that He's requiring us to love Him first before anything else. But see, once again, we're not looking at something we have to work for. It's something that is already in us. It comes naturally. So why do we think that God is selfish? That's a good question. Well, maybe we ought to look in the mirror and then we'll get the answer to that question. Yeah, yeah. Because when I look in the mirror, what am I thinking about? Yep, me. Thinking about me. God doesn't do that. That's where we get mixed up. We think He's like us. In reality, He's saying, let this love be the characteristic in you so that you can be like me. So that when you look in the mirror, you're looking past yourself and you're seeing the people out there that God wants to touch. So how do we do this? When we focus on what He wants, He knows how to bring the most benefit out of every situation. The retribution always has you in the equation. So I'm talking about God paying you back. So when you are displaying love towards Him, it's like a boomerang that comes back to you. And so you need to understand this. Otherwise, we're just going to think, well, we're giving God all our love, and what do we get in return? That is the misconcept. So listen to this. The retribution is always towards you. When you give to Him, it's like a boomerang that comes back to you. In other words, you receive the greatest benefit by following His desires. The focus on Him produces the quality of me. Wow, that's a good thought. Absolutely, I'm going to tell you something. The greatest benefit that I have ever found in this life is in relationship with my Creator. It's not just something that I have to do. It's something that I long for every day. Because once I learn that when I give to Him, He's giving back to me, it's not necessarily that I am looking for Him to give back to me. It's just that I know when I have that relationship with Him, it's so much more beneficial for me. That's what I've found. So when I say that my relationship with Him is the greatest, I'm telling you, there's not even a close second. So have I always agreed with Him and been happy with what He wants? No, but I have learned happy is not in getting Him to move towards me. It is in me moving towards Him. I've always found my love for Him is just a drop in the bucket compared to His ocean of love that He's brought back to me. In all my shortcomings and failures, His love has found no end. With all the confusions in life, when all the smoke is cleared away, I find Him with arms wide open. My love for Him has benefited me so much more than it's benefited Him. So in Him, I found security and provision. Whatever my lack in life, He has been the perfect measure, the source that fills the categories whatever the category is that life uncovers, whatever it is, whether I need money, whether it's relationship, whether it is an emotional pain on the inside of me that never seems to heal, whatever it is, he's got the solution for it. Now, does it come automatically? No, it doesn't. Because it's interesting that we expect God to answer our prayers without even us asking him. It's like we go through life and this happens or that happens and bad comes knocking on our door and what do? Who do we blame? Nobody else seems to be in the picture, so it must be God. Why did you let this happen? And so we get this concept about God. And how can you love somebody with that kind of a concept? You can't. So you see, it's not just up to him. Well, now, wait a second. God can do anything. Yeah, God can do anything. But he's limited himself to what you ask of him. And so that's where the relationship comes in. And this is where love is truly developed, folks. It's not in just, okay, so I'm going to throw some love at him. Throw some, I love you, Lord. I'll talk to you later. Got to go to work. I love you, Lord. I've, been a long day. Got to go to sleep. I love you, Lord. It's, I got to eat a bite so I can get back to do what I want to do. You see, we get so caught up in our own life, we forget about him until something bad happens. And then we think, oh, yeah, now see what God has done. And so he is a good scapegoat for all of our unanswered questions. But I want you to understand, when you find this love that Jesus is talking about, this love for God, it may not answer all those questions, but it'll give you a peace and a solution on the inside that causes you to move on, that eventually the answers will come. And so, like I say, we tend to mix him into the hard places of life that a lot of times don't make sense. And therefore, because they don't make sense in our mind, we think, okay, it's him. So I want you to understand, circumstances will never determine his character of who he is. And when you use circumstances to determine God, well, when circumstances are good, yeah, love's easy. Circumstances not good, well, you know what? Love is optional. You know what? Lord, you allowed this to happen in my life, so you want love from me? You go find somebody else. And so this is what we tend to do. This is how we treat the Creator, our Creator, the one who made everything. Now, he is in control, but he doesn't cause all things to happen, and we need to understand that. And so I want to go on a little rabbit trail here, because it's important for us to understand, especially when we're talking about the most important thing. Because what happens is we do something wrong, and it affects somebody else, and we go to God and say, Lord, forgive me. And what does God do? He forgives us. But we got to understand that our actions have caused a ripple effect into what he wants to do for that other person. And so what happens, that other person starts saying, well, God allowed this to happen. Well, you know what? God allowed it to happen because he gave you a choice. And so when we mix that together with the thought of the most important thing, which is to love him, then what happens is it brings confusion. And I want you to know, he is never in the confusion. Never, ever. And so the only way that you can escape this dilemma is to get your eyes off of whatever the situation is. Get your eyes on him. And if you don't feel the love, that's okay. You just express, Lord, I don't feel it, but you said this is important. So because it's important, I love you. So, in spite of what goes on around you, He is always with you. And this is something you need to understand. He never leaves you, never forsakes you. What does that mean? He's always there, and the 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 bad stuff that comes out of us doesn't turn His face away from us. He never forsakes you. So what happens is when you start operating in that love without feeling, just an expression, and say, God, I love you, what this does is it brings you back to square one. It brings you back to your place where you can hear Him, that you can see Him. Because when you look at Him through the circumstances, you are not going to see Him. Circumstances are nowhere able to reveal who He is. And so the key is to love, right? Love Him. When you love Him, what happens? His love flows back to you. Oh, this is so important. Do you not feel love? Well, make that expression of faith, okay? You said this is what I need to do. I am expressing my love to you. And before you know it, I'm going to tell you that His love is going to come back to you. Remember, it has a boomerang effect. Therefore, my love for Him doesn't compare to His love for me. His love lifts me above the circumstances to reveal a side of Him that I would never have discovered otherwise. You know what this does? It increases the capacity to love Him. So you may say, Rick, well, I've never done that before. And, and so, I'm a little skeptical on what you're trying to tell me. Try it. Try this. If you're not feeling love towards God because your world is crumbling or whatever's going on, just, Lord, you said to love you. That's what I'm doing. I don't feel it, but I'm doing it. And see, what happens is His love comes back to you in a boomerang effect. You feel that love. You start seeing what that love produces, not on the outside, but on the inside. And then the next time you face this difficulty, you know, I may not feel it, but I'm going to operate in it. So when we love Him, the true picture of life becomes clear. And so when we do start following this, make this a habit in our life, I'm going to bring you to the second point. What was the second point that Jesus said? It's all in love, but the first was love God. The second, love your neighbor. So the second rule of life is equally as important. Love your neighbor as yourself. This covers an attitude that opens an avenue that otherwise cannot be recognized. This part of the rule is less about God and more about you. When you learn to love your neighbor in this way, it gives you an otherwise inescapable ability to get your eyes off of yourself. So when I focus my attention towards my neighbor, what it does, it delivers me for me. Wow. It can do the same for you. So this can be a difficult exercise because we're all selfish by nature. And most of the time, we don't even want to be delivered. After all, we have the best plans for our life, and we don't need the interference of our neighbor in that picture. Surely, God understands reasoning in this assumption. Maybe not. The source of this love your neighbor, well, it's not inherent in us either. It is a byproduct of the first law, to love the Lord your God. We cannot fulfill this requirement without Him. So when I'm saying, or when Jesus is saying, love your neighbor, we have this affection for our neighbor. Maybe they did something nice for us when they mowed their lawn. They mowed a little portion of ours, and you know what? We love our neighbors for that. Or you know what? They brought us over some soup one time when we were sick, and you know what? We love them for that. But when their trash starts blowing on our side of the yard, well then, yeah, there's a condition there. I want to love my neighbor, but keep your trash on your side of the yard. That's the concept we get, folks. But in reality, the love that Jesus is talking about is a love that says, I love them in spite of their mistakes. Now you understand that love doesn't come from us. It comes from Him. So you are the avenue of God's love. You see, some people can't feel His love because you are not exhibiting that love. And you heard the thought on that some people, the only God that some people will ever see is the God that's in you. And so when we're talking about loving our neighbor, it's not conditional, folks. It is something that God puts in us. It's something that helps the people that aren't helping themselves. It is the ones out there. It's like Jesus talking about having 100 sheep and one of them being lost. What happens? You leave the 99 to go get that one. That's the love I'm talking about. So you are an avenue of that God, of God's love. Loving your neighbor may be on the list, but it's definitely not at the top of the list most of the time. And it's because we fail to allow God's love to flow through us. So I want you to understand that the whole key, Jesus said, the greatest law is to love. That's the greatest. Love God, love your neighbor. This doesn't come from you, folks. It comes from Him. And so, how do you do it? You love Him. And all the rest comes through you. I hope this message resonates with you because I want you to be successful, and God does too. And so if we understand that following that first rule, well, it's the key to all success. And I'm not talking about having lots of money and stuff. I'm talking about having what is really, truly valuable. Have a great day.